Now, as for what's expected in this Sunday's historic hearing, we're joined by columnist Marc Schulman here in studio. Marc, a pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure.
All right, so talk us through what we can expect. What will this Sunday's hearing entail?
Well, Sunday is actually the reading of all of the charges against him. So it'll be a long reading. I don't know how long it'll take, but it'll probably take 2 or 3 hours to read all of the charges and all the details against him and against others. That is an opportunity usually for a defendant to, first of all, say that I understand the charges against me and to ask any sort of clarifying information. In every case until now, that's a requirement. The defendant has to be there to hear the charges that are brought against him, and it'll take a few hours for it to take part. And the visual of that is going to be interesting.
Certainly the visuals will be, but we know that, of course, this is the first trial, so the prosecution says he has to be there. We know over the hearing, we know over the course of the trial he won't be expected to be in every single hearing, although there will be a lot of stress, no doubt, on the Israeli premier. How could this impact his ability to lead?
Well, I would think he'd have to be in most of the cases. Most of the time he'll have to be here. I don't think it's possible for him really not to be there. If a witness is on, he's the one who can say to his lawyers, you know what, he's not telling you the truth, or why don't you ask him about this? I don't think it's very, very rare for a defendant not to be there. I'm not even sure he's allowed not to be there. How will it affect? Well, he claims he's a Superman, and therefore he can do both things simultaneously. He also claimed to Prime Minister Olmert before he resigned and before he was even charged with anything that you can't be involved in being Prime Minister at the same time that you're worried about your trial. And here we're at the stage where not only is he worried about his trial, the trial is taking place, and he thinks he can do both.
Well, he certainly might want to be there, considering all the commentary we've been hearing even today about whether the Premier will even be able to get a fair trial.
Right, so this has been a plan since the very beginning. At the first stages, when the investigation began, there were attacks by members of the Likud against the police. The police were biased, the police were this, even though the police commissioner at the time had been appointed by Netanyahu, and it was someone clearly from the right wing of, lived in the settlements, a right-wing guy, religious guy, but he was against Netanyahu. Then when it went to the prosecutor's office, it moved to attacking the prosecutors. Then when it moved to Mandelblit, who was the attorney general, I'm not sure that Netanyahu expected him to actually go ahead and charge him, because what's come out recently about Mandelblit was something that quite clearly Netanyahu knew all about, what's called the Hapaz affair, the issue with the appointment of the last two times the chief of staff, and he knew about all these things that had come out, but he appointed him anyway. My guess was because he thought he had that over him. But now that Mandelblit has gone forward, they're trying to undermine Mandelblit, who, again, a religious guy, worked closely with Netanyahu for many years, and he's being said, well, he's a left wing, he's working for the left wing, he's working for the press. Now, the next stage, of course, is the judges. And today we saw Prime Minister Netanyahu quote an article by a jurist in Israel who said that Netanyahu can't get a fair trial. So the Prime Minister of Israel is tweeting a quote from someone who's saying that he can't get a fair trial in Israel. And so the next stage is to undermine the judiciary and say, I can't get a fair trial. And the whole goal is to make the judiciary, the police, the state prosecutor, everybody to be against him. It's therefore some sort of a conspiracy. They've been working at this for years at this point. And they come back and say, look who's not liked in the country, who's not believed. Well, guess why they're not believed? Because we've been undermining them for the last couple of years.
Right, well, there's certainly been many new precedents set here. We're about to see one of the most historic, I suppose you could say, on Sunday. Marc Schulman, thank you for that insight.
My pleasure.